Good evening. This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of Council of Monday, June 17th at 7 o'clock. We like to start off our meeting in a good way, and so I've asked Councillor Hanson to read our land acknowledgement.
We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hanson. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will someone move its adoption? Moved by Councillor Forbes, second by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Council, we have no minutes that have been circulated with the meeting, so I'm going to carry on, skip through that tonight. We reserve a period of up to 30 minutes at the front end of any regular meeting of council to hear matters of concern for the community. People who have signed up in advance are given priority here. So I do have 4 speakers who have signed up in advance, so we're going to go to them first. But we usually have about time for about 10 speakers at the front end of the meeting. And so once we've completed those 4 speakers, we'll start seeing if other people would like to add their comments at that time. And so the first speaker I'd like to call up is Sanaz Mani. Welcome. Come on down and we're going to turn the microphones on at the table there. And when you're comfortable, we'll give you 3 minutes. I will just say that regular meetings of council are carried on in a hybrid fashion. That means that members of the council, the public, and the staff can participate in the meeting in person or virtually through our Zoom setup. And so, but in that you have currently tonight have all 7 members of the council here and present. But thank you very much, Sanaz Mani, for coming. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Your Worship and dear councillors, for this opportunity. My name is Sanaz Mani. My husband and I are owners of one of the properties in the project that will be discussed here today. 23 unit stacked townhouses at 1950 Sandown Place rezoning. In this project, owners of 3 properties have come together to propose a small townhouse development. And if I may, I would like to quickly point out some positive points in terms of affordability in this project, in my view. We have 3 lockups, which means 13% of the units. We propose 3 accessible units that are 2 bedrooms and are single story, easily accessed from the streets. Again, 13% of the units. We have 3 1-bedrooms and the rest are small 2 bedrooms. So many of the units hopefully will be offered at around $1 million mark or less. And the development is small enough that I think it's safe to assume that there won't be strata fees, or there will be small strata fees, so that can help with the affordability. And also our aim was to have the minimum required number of parkings for this project. And I would like to also mention that I'm an architect. I practice on the North Shore as well, and I'm a huge advocate for bird-friendly design for our buildings. And as long as we own a stake in this project, I will advocate for that. The number of wild birds in Canada are declining, and it's estimated around 25 million birds are lost due to glass collisions each year. So I will advocate for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your comments. The next speaker I have is Drew Hogarth, followed by Stephanie Wilson.
Right up here is where I put stuff on the screen, or does that help?
Actually, if you just put it in the center of the table, we're going to put a camera on from the roof looking down here.
Beautiful. No worries, no worries. I appreciate it.
And then at the end of your presentation, if you want to leave a copy with us, then we'll have you put in the black tray. We can scan it and share it with the council members.
No worries, it's all your information. Thank you for having me today.
Your Honorable Council and Mayor. Just want to say how professional everything has been that I've witnessed here, and access to information has been very amazing. What I want to talk to you about today is the coach house bylaws. You're going to be amending, or you have amended a bunch to be non-applicable. I would like for the council to consider in the future making it so there's access not just from the main from lanes in the backyard, but from the front with the properties, coach houses possibly in the front. North Van District is different than almost everywhere else I've seen. We've got so much green space and natural beauty here. A lot of our homes back onto these beautiful paradises. So to be able to have more density on those, so we could have multi-families there, because I have my parents-in-law living with me currently and 3 kids, and to have a structure like that at the front of my house would mean that we could have my grandparents there easier locally. As my kids get older, they could be there, and then my wife could eventually move there, and we could be there for generations. And this would be something that I'd consider both very affordable. Some of the great information I've stolen from your online courses is this is sort of the regulations, coach houses, vehicle access. The required permitted is for a lane access or a local road with a corner lot. I think the proposal should be non-applicable. I would say the same for where the coach house sits. The current is for the rear of the dwelling. I would suggest it be non-applicable. I'll just give you a quick little show of where I am in the world. I'm a block away from this red zone, which I believe is 12 stories, in a paradise against a river. For me to be able to have family there and be there for generations would be a dream come true in the paradise that we live in, that we all get to live in. Thank you for hearing that. On a different note, I'd like to share what another district municipality is doing. This is Coquitlam. What I like about what they have done is, for somebody who's visual, they've given what the proposal is and then what their vision is. So they've given a graphic of what they suggest. So for somebody who's looking to build a some additional housing on the property, to have a picture of what you're looking for and some graphics really makes it easy for me to present something that would be beneficial. Your own research has suggested that coach house and accessory houses are very popular. I think it's 78% of people with approve of this. This is something very popular in this area, and I hope that we can have these in not just areas with lanes, but areas against green spaces. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Drew Hogarth. Next speaker I have is Stephanie Wilson, followed by Mike Neufeld. Stephanie's joining us here in person. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, everyone. In 2021, Statistics Canada found a 64% increase in hate crimes against 2S LGBTQ+ people over the previous reporting year. In an Ipsos survey of 26 countries earlier this year, Canada registered a precipitous drop in the support for 2S LGBTQ+ people. Only 49% of Canadian respondents agreed that people should be open about their sexual orientation or gender identity. This is a 12% decline since 2021. 2S LGBTQ+ rights in Canada are sliding backwards. It's not just an overpass. It's not just conspiracy-laden transphobic graffiti. It's not just the Progress Pride flag from Monsdale Quay being cut down and burned at a Freedom Convoy party in Abbotsford. What is promoted on Mountain Highway is repeated around the North Shore, not just by people who spend their lives sitting on an overpass, but by people who have learned that right-wing extremism is acceptable and that conspiracy-driven hate has room to fester. This makes life fundamentally more dehumanizing and dangerous for the queer and trans people that live right here in North Vancouver. Imagine walking into a brewery or a grocery store or a community event and hearing someone complain about the quote rainbow groomers and their quote gender ideology. That language is meant to make people feel unsafe and hide who they really are. It's meant to disempower anyone who doesn't fit into far-right ideals, to take away their voice and their humanity. Circling back to the Lonsdale Key Progress Pride flag. At the beginning of this year, the court found that Christopher Kamianek's crimes were motivated by hate. What he said in that live stream and what he wrote on that flagpole continue to be repeated on the Mountain Highway overpass. Anti-2S LGBTQ+ hate is not new in Canada. It has been fundamental to transnational far-right movements like the alt-right. But it has moved from a murmur to a roar on an overpass over Highway 1. I understand that the original injunction sought by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure is no longer in place, and I would like to know why that is. Even if you ignore the messaging on the overpass, I was assaulted on June 6th and probably would not be here this evening if I went over the railings into the highway. Other counter-protesters have been harmed, and the rally group has seriously threatened passers-by. I cannot emphasize enough how dangerous this situation has become. I want to know how this is going to be resolved, because freedom of speech does not extend to the promotion of hate or physical assault. It's Pride Month, and Pride Month is a celebration of existence in a world that attempts to silence queer and trans people. Pride is finding your voice in a world that increasingly demands shame. North Vancouver desperately needs your voices to show that this is a safe community and that everyone is welcome here. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Stephanie Wilson.
Could you just update us at a time in regards to that injunction and why it's no longer in place?
I can ask the question. I don't know. I'm assuming the court put a sunset clause on it of some sort. I thought the province was going to be pursuing having it on all MOTI infrastructure. So I'll have to check into that.
Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker I have is Mike Neufeld, followed by check in with Lane North. I believe Mr. North had asked to speak and it was after the cutoff. So just want to check in if Lane North is attached to the meeting. Oh, right there. There you go. So you'll be next if that's okay. So then I have Mike Neufeld. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. The first issue I'd like to raise is Dollarton Highway, specifically the 1 kilometer stretch between the new fire hall and Ellis Street. I've lived on Ellis for 7 years with my young family, and this section is still totally unsafe for pedestrians and cyclists. I'd even say it's getting worse due to truck traffic at the Tupper Gravel Depot. In particular, residents of Windsor Park have no safe way to bike out of the neighborhood and very limited options on foot. I've asked the district about this a few times over the years, and most recently this month, and every time I've received some variation of, we're going to fix it in the next few years. Now I see the recent DNV Cycles roadmap doesn't even mention Dollarton. It's hard to understand how the district doesn't view Dollarton as a top priority. Personally, I think it's an embarrassment to the district and it negatively impacts the quality of life of my family and others in the Windsor Park neighborhood, and for no apparent reason. I'm urging council to direct district staff to make it a priority to fix Dollarton over the next year. It doesn't have to be the ultimate solution, but at least give us an interim fix that adds a shoulder and makes it safe for people to walk and ride without having to negotiate with dump trucks. And if something stands in the way of this, please give us some explanation of what the holdup is and what we can do to get past it. On a related note, I've been watching the construction of Baden Park and have assumed that Lytton Street, south of the Parkway, would have bike lanes when finished, since it'll be serving 1,000 residents of Baden, students at Windsor, Ron Andrews patrons, and families trying to access the new Spirit Trail from Seymour Heights. I checked the development plan and found out that it has no provision for bike lanes on Lytton, south of the Parkway. I think this will make it a nightmare for anyone trying to bike through there. So I'm asking, before it's too late, please find a way to revise the plan and not build another major connection in this district without bike lanes. I think we all wish past planners had made provision for cycling while designing Windsor Park, Strathaven, Apex, and Dollarton. The district now has the opportunity to do it right with Lytton. Please don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Mike Neufeld. The next speaker I have is Lane North, followed by Hazen Colbert. Welcome, Lane. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, council members.
I'm going to need you to be right in front of the microphone somehow, just so we
Which
can.
one?
Which, sorry?
Which one?
They're both on, actually. You can sit in front of either one, but just so online participants can hear what you say.
Well, good evening, council members. My name is Lane North, and I'd like to speak about the bill that you'll be looking at shortly on changing the parking bylaw for Kate's Park and Lynn Valley and the Deep Cove area. I understand that there is a problem locally for people trying to get in and out of some of those areas, and that traffic has increased substantially in the last few years. I'd also like to note, though, that having a fee that residents have to pay, I think, even if they can pay $10 a year, represents a barrier to residents that I'm not sure is necessary. I think that potentially, alternatively, if people had their license plates, because I believe your license plate is registered to where you live. If people's license plates were looked at to decide if they live in the district instead, that would remove the hassle for some of these people. And about $10 isn't much of a barrier for most of the people that live here. I do think one of the perks of these parks for many people is that they can bring their families there on the weekends in the afternoons without having to worry about any extra hurdles for going there. As for the Deep Cove area as well, I'd like to point out that there are some local parking spots that aren't being used that often that I'm not sure people know about. The local Sea Cove High School actually has a parking lot that sits empty most of the weekends. That's a local trick that you wouldn't know about unless you live near the area, perhaps. But until a couple of years ago, it was widely accessible and you were able to walk down near to the beach from there. Since then, it has been locked and sits unused and empty most of the weekends. As for people using transit to get to Deep Cove, I'd like to comment that a number of people that go to that area, residents, go on longer trips. You know, they might be hiking all day or they're kayaking. It's not really possible to bring your kayak on a bus. So I'd like to see an option for some of the residents that are going to be out there all day to have that option instead of getting ticketed or having to be back for a couple of hours. And finally, I think that if we were looking at, well, okay, so when I looked online, I found this proposal said that the revenue would be reinvested into the parks, but I couldn't find much more on what that looked like. I know that there is $6 million being allocated to turfs and fields that falls under parks, and $375,000 for forest restoration that's being removed for budget considerations. But if the community wanted to find out more about what this looks like, and considering many of our parks are heavily forested, I'm not sure where they'd find out, but I would like it to be easier for residents to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments, Lane North. The next speaker I have is Hazen Colbert, followed by Robert Webb.
Thank you, Mayor Little.
Mr. Colbert's joining us virtually. Mr. Colbert, can you hear me?
Mayor Little, I can hear you very well.
Welcome. I can hear you clearly. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Mayor Little and Council, 2 years ago, in fact, 2 years and 1 month ago, there was a report published about mass graves, or a mass grave that had been found at a residential school in Kamloops. Allegations were made that those residential schools, not just the one at Kamloops, but across the country, had mass graves, and those mass graves contained the remains of students who had been forcibly removed from their families, First Nations students. Now, after 2 years, we've realized that this was a complete lie. An egregious con that was played out. There is the radar that has been used for 2 years at Kamloops has discovered that, in fact, these mass graves are nothing other than the clay tiles that were used in the late 1800s and right through until the 1950s for septic systems. This is not an unusual thing, and it's actually quite shocking that nobody thought about this when these first reports were made. There is no mass grave at Kamloops, and so far there have been no mass graves found in Canada. Regrettably, at the council meeting that shortly followed the alleged claim of a mass grave, a number of councillors came in and they impugned, defamed, and frankly, they threatened those of us who are old stock English and French Canadians. Terrible words were used about my forebears, words that they were despicable people. These claims now have been proven false. Two of those people that made the claims, and I'm quoting from the words which I went in and checked. Two of those people that made those claims were James Hansen, who claimed, and I quote, "We have known about this generally for many, many years, and finally we have proof." And then that other weird one, Megan Curran, she followed. There is absolutely no proof. And so I would ask that this council, starting with James Hansen, and please, Your Worship, I can see, and through Your Worship, I simply ask tonight that James Hansen stop looking at me with that tone of voice. And
Mr. Colbert.
Shut up, Mike. Apologize for those awful things he said.
Can we please turn off the mic?
Mr. Colbert, I'm going to rule your comments out of order this evening. You know, we can't, the district can't give people a platform to take those kinds of insulting actions towards members of the public and members of the council and the staff. So I'm going to end your comments at that point. The next speaker I have is Robert Webb. Mr. Webb, welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council. Unfortunately, the new camera doesn't zoom in, so it's as well. So there you go.
And council, you've seen me before. I'm the guy most often down on the overpass. Since we've been back, which was on April 27th, our one-year injunction was over. Actually, it was pointed out by the senior member at the RCMP, local RCMP here, that we're good to go there. They support us, by the way. And so I've made a concerted effort to not fly anything anti-SOGI or child sexualization. That's not near and dear, particularly to my heart. It's disgusting, and I agree with, you know, that. But what's near and dear to me is the genocide that's occurring, and the bioweapon, and et cetera, et cetera. I have personal experience with the harms from this vaccine injection. Pardon me, it's not a vaccine. But I'd just like to point out to you that even though we are not flying anything anti-SOGI, and we've never have been anti-gay by any means, there are gay people within my community who regularly come down there with us, and yet we are branded as you know, purveyors of hate, etc. So anyways, an officer showed up on your behalf, Mr. Little, to you know, read us a riot act of sorts, and going to come at us and have us removed supposedly from our lawful right for free assembly and freedom of protest. So, you know, I'm here to inform you that we have an impasse, and bylaws are not laws, just like mandates are not laws, they're asks. And there's enough of us here now that know what's going on, and we're morally strong enough to stand up for what we know is right. Everybody knows when you hit something right, you know inherently what's right and what's wrong. This whole woke ideology that's permeating everywhere in our society these days. I'm going to leave you with this. I implore you to have a little look at how wokeness weaponizes compassion. It's a great article. Also, the Luperon legacy, that's another great article about really what's going on with the transgender movement. But again, not particularly near and dear to my heart. What is my community. I'm born and raised here, and I will continue to spread my message of hope and love. And we'll look forward to that because the police are on our side. Thanks.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear about one thing, Mr. Webb. So I did call the non-emergency line because the injunction had been told to me that if you attached signs to the bridge or if the sidewalk was obstructed, that we were to call and inform them. And I did call non-emergency and I did say that I observed the signs were attached to the bridge.
Yeah.
And so the RCMP made the decision to go out to the scene. If
Armed
they
with a
were no
letter.
longer backed with the court injunction that articulated those special powers, then you know, I would have expected them to be aware of that at the time. But you know, I'm not here to have a debate with the content of your argument, just to say that my understanding is that you were not meeting the conditions of the injunction, and if that injunction has expired, then we'll have to see what the next step is from the province and MOTI.
Yeah, good enough. I was, you know, he was very kind. Like I said, we are supported within that community. And
Well,
I'd
I'd be careful about that. It's not a
I got no
monolith. I'm
issues.
sure other
I have
people.
no
there-
issues. I speak
yeah.
with them every time.
Thank you very much,
I'd like
Mr.
to
Webb.
ensure that you guys all have an opportunity to read. what-
If you leave them in the black tray, they'll be circulated to council if they so wish.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so we have about 10 more minutes. If would anybody else like to address the council at this time? Okay, so we're going to move on with this evening's agenda. All right, so we have a special delegation this evening, and here I'll read the appropriate parts out. So you may have to help me with the name on this, but we do have representatives from Immigrant Link Center Society here, and they're going to be doing a presentation and delegation. And so please, if you want to come up and start getting set up and comfortable. The difference between a delegation and regular public input is instead of 3 minutes, we give them 5 minutes to be able to speak about their specific issue, to go in depth about the issue that they represent in the community. And it also provides an opportunity for Q&A after the fact for council to ask clarifying questions about the presentation. And so when the 5-minute presentation is up, I'll come back to the council and see if there's any additional questions that hopefully you can help us address. But at this time, it'd be great if you could introduce your delegation and then welcome. You have 5 minutes to present to the council.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you very much, Council, to having us. We are representing Immigrant Link Center Society. This is our PR, Melody Moheb. This is our Vice President, those two engines of our society, Rejhane Mirjani, and my name is Igor Bielac, and we are very, very pleased to have these 5 minutes to talk about our work in North Shore.
Welcome, Igor. I'm going to recommend that you speak directly into that microphone and nice and loud voice so that people at home can hear your presentation.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So our topic is actually increasing food security through zero food waste. And before we dive deeper, I would like to give you a heads up or some glimpse of the history. So imagine 9 years ago, a handful of new immigrants trying to find new way, try to find new path here in Canada. We are so pleased and feel so welcome that we wanted to contribute and give it back a little bit. So I met my colleagues in English school. We didn't learn only language, we learned about the Canadian values. And we are so deeply touched because we bring our kids on a safe. I'm coming from Serbia, she's from Iran, so many other corners of the world which are not great or safe like Canada. So thank you so much for having us here. So the thing is that when we think about what we can do and how we can contribute, we understand that the food waste here in Canada is in a huge scale. We saw the mountain and the pile of the food which is wasted and ended on a landfill. We know immediately we can step in, we can do something. We start to collecting day old, close to best before with some imperfection, and deliver in the same day to our classmates in a school. we feel so good because after just 1 month, 2 women approached us to our farm beneficiaries and told us, one, she said, I have nutrition food on my table and I'm praying to God for you guys every day. So we know that nutrition part because the difference between us in that time and the food banks is that we are delivering fresh, nutritious food, not just the cans and the pastas. Also, the second beneficiary, she told us, oh, I saved enough money to buy new shoes for my daughter. So we didn't think about that component. We know nutrition part, but circular economy actually really make our mind to swirl. So we understand that the $50 billion is ending every year in a landfill and without too much sense. So, and the third component, which actually really thrilled us, that we are doing not only for the less fortunate or for the circle or for the economy, we're working also for our environment. So when the food is ending on a landfill producing methane, which is 25 times worse than carbon dioxide. So to prevent that, we have just simple action. Hey, don't throw the perfectly edible food, collect, give to the less fortunate, empower them, give them that power, and after that, save our environment for all of us. So, we are addressing food insecurity, and as you know, that's the big problem right now here in BC. We have officially statistics said that we have 500,000 hungry people here, so which is mean they're missing 1 meal. And on the other way, we have so much food which is ending on a garbage. So those two, we must match it somehow. So we are also strengthening community cohesion, providing Canadian working experience. And I can talk from my own experience. When I moved here, barely speak English, but volunteering work helped me to feel comfortable and to improve my English and to get my first working experience, which helped me further in our work. Also, we are working very, very hard for the future, and that's education kids and students about the food waste. It's super important. So let's now narrow and let's talk about statistics. So we are converting over 1 million kilogram of food annually, and it's a value right now around $8 million. Also, we are reducing around 1,500,000 equivalent kilogram of CO2. This project aim and support currently over 4,500 people biweekly, and which 116 live in district of North Vancouver. But that's not it, because I will read it some message from the vice principal of the school district 44, which she's telling us about our work with her. She said Wednesday deliveries, our delivery feeds Sutherland Secondary School students, 140 students receive lunch that day, plus the food program feeds 250 students over the week. In addition, food is brought to 3 elementary schools like yogurt, cheese, meat, and feeding over 600 kids for that week. We are also feeding 3 families with 2 to 3 boxes. That's only Wednesday. Now we are coming to Thursday, feeds 3 high school, total 600 kids, including our most vulnerable students, to have food access all day, including bringing food home, and 40 students at the school and their families, and 25 families to divide the reminded food of the food. So when we combine all of that, it will be a total around 2,000 students from North Shore is getting support, from which we whole North Shore, but mostly in a district. And when I'm talking about a school, that's this school, Mountainside School. That's the biggest one. So return of investment will be for whenever we are putting $1, $16 we are putting back. So now I'm ready for Q&A. I tried to narrow everything, but I couldn't say that with a, yes. For him to join us. Yeah, and if you give me just 1 second, we couldn't do this without help of more than 350 volunteers. And Councillor Jordan, he worked full shift with us here on North Shore, so he knows exactly from where food we are picking up, how we are doing, and who is getting the food. So we are super pleased to be here, super pleased to serve community, and we love our work.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Back, will you be moving receipt of the delegation? Thank you. Is there a seconder for receipt of the delegation? Second by Councillor Murray. Councillor Back, your comments and questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Little. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Really appreciate you coming and enlightening us, the rest of council, on what Immigrant Link Center Society does. I was invited back in January by my colleague in the city, Councillor Valente, to join you on a ride along. And for me, it was really enlightening to see, first of all, the amount of food waste that is happening in our community, and just the way that you were able to connect in this case, the grocery stores with the organizations that really need that food and really benefit from it in a huge way. So on the day that we did the tour, we did, I think it was 3 different pickups from Save On Foods stores as well as IGA. And then we distributed that food to North Shore Women's Center, to North Shore Neighborhood House, and to Silver Harbor. I remember meeting the chef there who was very appreciative to have any kind of fresh produce that he could cook with. So again, for me, it was great to see firsthand just how this issue is. I know food waste is a huge issue, but how you're making that link and connecting. So I guess I'll ask kind of a bigger question, and that is, what some of your biggest challenges are or opportunities right now as an organization, and how the district might be able to assist going forward.
So our still biggest challenge is to explain to the stores that it's not needed to throw the food, and it's also perfectly good if you donate it. So that's one of the biggest challenges, and as you councillors and any district or any city can help us in advocating. Just put a word that it's totally fine and it's okay to donate the food. So that's one of the first step, and after that we can think more.
Yeah.
So what is our challenges here? Because whenever I'm talking generally, but actually Rehan is the one who is doing all the job.
We are looking for more volunteer here and more stores. If you tell to the stores, we are looking for the volunteer and for the more stores. If you talk with any grocery stores, and they can donate their near to best before food, don't go to the garbage, just giving to us. We will be appreciated. And every day our truck is coming from the North Vancouver to the end of the Lynn Valley, and they can pick up the food in every day.
And have to say, on the volunteer front, we had a driver, Hanif, who was excellent. And you know, for him, it was just, he was getting as much out of it, I think, as he saw himself giving. He built relationships with the different organizations where he was distributing the food. So I don't know. For me, again, just kind of seeing it firsthand, it's amazing just how much waste there is. And I think the challenge is finding that waste and then connecting it to the people that can use it. And in a lot of cases, it was fresh food that was going to go bad in a day or two. And you were able to get it to people like that day. So it all seemed very organized. And I wanted you to come tonight just to be able to kind of showcase what you do to the rest of council and just kind of highlight this food security issue, because it's a big one in our community. And I think we can all appreciate how the cost of groceries, it's such a tangible thing to see, has gone up everywhere. And we know that there's a lot of people in our community who are struggling, and they're really feeling that right now. So yeah, thank you very much for the work that you do. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just want to be clear. So the nature of the volunteers you're looking for licensed drivers who can go out and pick up, or they'll go with a driver, as in Councillor Back's
Both
case?
of them.
Okay.
Both.
So
The driver.
typically evening as they're closing down the
Morning.
shop, or it's all times of day that they're looking?
Morning time,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
Morning time from the 8 to 12 to 1.
It's for the drivers. So drivers must finish the whole loop and pick up whole food, because that's just the half of the job. Second half is actually when they're bringing to the place, and now they should sort it. They should put it in individual boxes. When I'm saying individual, we know exactly each family is behind each box. So are you allergic? Yes, it says there. Are you have more kids? It says there. So you will get more milk. You will get more eggs. If you're just one, then we will set up that for you. And it's super important to say that food which we are getting from the North Shore stores, it's here. It's a North Shore. It's not going anywhere. Our volunteers we are working in 11 cities, but here volunteers are from here. They are making a bond with the community, and we want to be present in this community with members of this community. Very important.
Yeah, every Wednesday and Thursday, food is going to the school district here, and this school mountainside. Every Thursday you can go to see where is the food is going, and every second Thursday food is going to West Lynn Baptist Church, and around 70 family are coming there. The 70 family are coming there too.
And also we are supporting other societies, which is, I think, very important. We believe only if we lifting each other, we can be successful as society. So like one of the example is Councillor Jordan said it will be Silver Harbor or
Neighborhood house,
North Shore
Moment
Neighborhood House,
Center.
Moment Center, and the others. Very, very important.
But in,
Do you have additional
Thank you,
comments?
Mayor. No, I forgot to speak into my mic. Thank you, Mayor Little. Thank you for the program and your work. What's the biggest challenge from people or restaurants or grocery stores getting involved?
Only the fear to not be sued. That's it. So, and we are
Because of the
fighting.
health issue.
Yeah,
It's a
but
health issue.
I think that's excuse, honestly, because 9 years when we are working this, they called us garbage people. Now they are calling us food rescue heroes. So
Right.
it was a long journey to come from that point. But the stigma, I think that everyone is feared that maybe someone is sue them and they are not aware of two law which protecting them if they are not selling the food. So maybe as a
So Health Link BC, which is an arm of the ministry, the provincial ministry, has you on their website. Yeah, I mean, have you used, are they willing to support with some sort of a letter from the provincial ministry to be able to send around to all of these businesses in order to say, we're okay with it? If we're okay with it, being the health department, they should be able to be okay with it.
I know, I agree with everything, but sometimes for us it's very challenging because we are not born here. So the lack of the connection, when we were lucky to know someone and then they can refer to us.
Well, I
So-
think you should totally reach out to the MLAs as well. The MLAs across the North Shore, reach out to them and talk to them about these programs because they're directly linked to the provincial government, obviously, and the health department. Because we've been talking about this for many, many years, just trying to donate food from catered events we may hold. And it was always the health department issue. So that's starting to sort of fade because now they're supporting this kind of charitable organization on their own website. So I think it's just, there's a few things missing. And you've got some big Save On, they support you, Safeway.
Yeah.
IGA,
Precious
okay,
Street
see, there you
Market.
go. So I think there's just a couple of things missing, and certainly if there's any assistance our planning department can give you, and or our economic development officer might be able to assist as well. We'd certainly offer that assistance. Thank you for your work.
Melody, would you like to add something?
yes, I would like to.
Oh, you just have to come up here and sit at one of these chairs so we get you on the record.
Thank you very much, Igor. Thank you for having us. My name is Melody Moheb, and I'm the Director of Public Relations for Immigrant Link Center Society. I just want to say that over the years, these amazing people were able to build a very solid relationship with all three levels of government. And we are also involved with the MLA's offices. I myself work for MLA in Coquitlam Mountain, Findonly. And here also MLA Boema is very familiar with our program. We try to get in touch with the MLA Susie Chand in near future. Hopefully we can talk to them. But based on our experience, a letter coming from the provincial government going to all stores, maybe it's very far-fetched and not really feasible. That's why we are directly talking to cities. It happened before that the mayor of Coquitlam did write a letter to stores and encourage them to work with us. And it was very, very helpful because local government is more, I mean, people are more familiar with your faces than like minister of something who is the MLA for, let's say, Nanaimo. That's, I think, one of the asks that if you could advocate in a formal way for us, that's very beneficial. And as also the mayor of the council of Port Moody, they passed the motion so that every single new stores that opens in Port Moody, they have to start from day one donating the food to our society. The liability issue that always comes up, that's something that we talk about it all the time. We have to clarify that That's not even a single thing. We are doing this for 8 years, not a single issue. And by the way, we are taking that away by asking the recipients and the clients that we have to write a disclaimer with us. So they know that our food is not perfect, and they have to, and they are consuming the food with their, that's their responsibility. So it's very, there is no really liability on the shoulder of the stores. And as people who, we know that people voted for you, they trust you and they have respect for you. I think that's the one asks that if you could advocate for us and talk to stores in any way that they could. Thank you, to get more food and nourish more people. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other member of council wishing to speak? Okay, we've moved and seconded receipt of delegation. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. On behalf of the council, thank you so much for coming out tonight and sharing your story and what you're up to. It sounds really interesting. I'm glad Councillor Back was able to go and check it out personally, and wish you well in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us, and let's make this impactful work even better together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, council, we're resuming the business of this evening's meeting, and we have a number of items at the start that are up for adoption, and we have a number of items at the tail end of the meeting that I think are probably the things we could consent to. Would anybody have an issue with me putting forward a consent agenda for 8.7, the electric vehicle strategy, and 8.8, the community excellence awards grant request? Anybody like those withdrawn from the consent agenda? I'll move that as a consent agenda. Is there seconded by Councillor Murray? Prepared to call a question on the matter. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. So if you're here tonight to hear about items 8.7 and 8.8, they have just been passed by the council with consent. And that releases some people to go home and enjoy their evening. I'm sure they're appreciative. The first items up for discussion are items returning back from public hearings or other discussions of the council, and they're only up for adoption. And so item 8.1, this is the bylaw 8692, amendment to fees and charges bylaw to enable paid parking at Panorama Park, Deep Cove Park, and Whey-ah-Wichen Kates Park. This is up for adoption. No debate on adoption. I'm prepared to call the question. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder on the matter? Second by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Council, the next item is bylaw 8679, transit oriented areas designation bylaw. This item is also returning back from passing it an earlier reading from council, and so it's up for adoption. Would somebody please move the motion? Moved by Councillor Moss, second by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with Councillors Murray and Forbes opposed. Next item is item 8.3. This is bylaws 8698, 8699, and 8700, implementation of small scale multi-unit housing. Trying to recall that we didn't bifurcate this the last time around. Okay, so I'm going to move it as both items up for adoption. Is there a seconder for both items up for adoption? Seconded by Councillor Murray. Prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? The motion carries with Councillors Pope and Back opposed. Okay. All right, the next item up for discussion is item 8.4. This is the off-street residential parking and transit-oriented areas. This one is the first time we're discussing this item, and so I'll look to staff for opening comments on the matter.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. This is a further requirement under the Provincial Bill 47 that requires a reduction to the parking standards within transit-oriented areas. In recent weeks, the province made it clear that it's their expectation to see the bylaw amendments be brought forward by all affected municipalities by the end of June. And so we're looking to try to facilitate a speedy review of the bylaw requirement. Essentially, for residential parking, within the transit-oriented areas that have been designated by council, the parking rate will be set to 0. However, all the other parking standards, such as for commercial parking or institutional parking and so on, will still apply. In addition, parking for those who are disabled will still apply to the property. And finally, if a developer voluntarily chooses to provide parking, then it will need to meet certain standards the district already has, such as the dimension of the stalls and the surfacing material. So the bylaws are available for council consideration as we move forward to implement the provincial legislative initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milburn. Councillor Pope, I see you have your hand raised. Is that from the earlier item? Would somebody be willing to move this motion or make a recommendation? Okay, if I don't see anyone moving the motion, Councillor Hansen is going to be moving. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Ma. Councillor Hansen, your opening remarks.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say, except that as I interpret the relevant provincial legislation, specifically Bill 47, we're mandated to update our bylaws in this fashion. And so those are my comments.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ma.
I just want to get clarification, if I can, from staff. Does the legislation prohibit council to have a public hearing on this issue?
Mr. Milburn.
Correct, Your Worship.
Pretty much does it. Okay.
So even if we didn't pass that clause, it would be illegal for us to have.
Right.
public hearing.
Okay. This further clarification, if I may. Does council need to pass a motion directing staff to develop an on-street parking strategy in TOAs?
Mr. Milburn.
I'm looking over to Peter Cohen to respond to that question as it relates to his area of service.
Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, so through the mayor, as part of the outcomes of what's been presented before you, we know that we need to speed up and what we're looking at on-street parking and those restrictions within those towers.
Okay. A follow-up question then. Is it contemplated that in terms of the on-street parking strategy, that it links or is in sync with the paid parking and the RPO policies? Is that part of it? I just want to make sure that we don't have all these different strategies everywhere.
Yeah, so through the mayor, the key primary focus and probably the more urgent area is in relation to our transit-oriented areas, which is FIBS and CAPU. But we also want to explore more broadly across the district in more of our denser areas what on-street parking could look like as well. You've brought up paid parking and our recent implementation of parking restrictions to Deep Cove. We'll be considering that as part of the whole robust review of on-street parking provision.
Right. And one final question, if I may. I believe the legislation restricts residential use. So if the developments in TOAs have CRUs, is it contemplated that there'll be parking requirements for those commercial units?
Mr. Milburn.
That's correct, Your Worship. That's up to local government to determine the parking level for other uses, such as commercial.
And that would come back later?
We'll be bringing forward a complete review of the zoning bylaw as mandated by the provincial government before the end of 2025.
Okay. Thank you.
But our existing numbers and requirements for industrial and commercial would stand until they're replaced?
That's correct. And in most cases, council sets the parking rates at the time of rezoning. So all the properties in the transit-oriented areas that council just passed a designation bylaw for, if a developer wishes to have a density or use that is inconsistent with their current zoning in those areas, they'll still need to come forward with a rezoning process, and we'll evaluate the parking needs at that time and set the parking rates, typically done on a case-by-case basis for the CD zones or comprehensive development zones.
Right, but that would pertain only to the commercial. We can't touch the
or disabled parking or any other use other than residential. So institutional, for example.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple questions, Mr. Milburn. What does this do to our ability to require a higher standard of electrification for parking stalls in buildings within the TOA?
Yeah. So we look to the provincial government guidelines where there is uncertainty. The guidelines seem to indicate that council still has some discretion with respect to if stalls are voluntarily provided, that we can set standards for those. The province has also said that we can still provide bicycle parking standards. They've said that in their guidelines. So we're trying to work within the guidelines. The act itself is quite limited in scope, and it just talks about residential parking.
So our prior program of requiring all new buildings to have level 1 charging to all of their parking stalls and have the transformer based on potential upgrade to level 2 charging, does that have any force and effect other than voluntary compliance?
It's voluntary compliance. If no parking spaces are required, then we wouldn't have them electrified either.
So unfortunately, the unintended consequence of this legislation is we lost the ability to require electrical infrastructure for parking in our multifamily buildings. That's something that the district had brought in a long time ago and was building up that infrastructure. What we're finding is that a lot of people who are renting in facilities don't feel like they have the weight at the strata councils and other places to be able to make the changeover to electrical infrastructure. And so if you have an electric vehicle and you're in a building that has not done the upgrade, it's very hard. So we were trying to assist with that. I think that's an oversight. I hope the province closes that loop and goes back to allowing municipalities to make regulations in that regard. I would also be curious, Mr. Milburn, does this also impact our ability to negotiate in car share programs like we have in the past?
I think that's a matter of open debate, as we do set standards for other measures through the rezoning negotiation process. And the province introduced some new measures that we're starting to look at under Bill 16 for a TDM, or transportation demand management measures. Those principally have to do with offsite works though. So I think we'll be looking to come back with further advice to council on how that could be implemented at the time that we see rezoning applications. However, the ability to negotiate for reduced parking in exchange for transportation demand management measures has been a key foundation of our negotiation approach in the past. So if we can't require parking spaces, that reduces our leverage for sure.
So again, a frustration on this, I think it's an unintended consequence of it, is that we used to use the requirements. So when I first came on council, we were at 1.8 stalls per unit. We dropped to 1.6, we dropped to 1.2, we dropped to unbundled, we went to 0.08, sorry, 0.8, that's blood alcohol content. Went to 0.8 and unbundled the parking stalls from the units themselves. And we gave further reductions to developments if they produced car share agreements on their property, so people could use an Evo, a Modi, whatever the different services are. And we gave them a variance on their parking in order to be able to encourage those kinds of things in the community. But since they're no longer required to have a minimum parking standard, it will be very hard to negotiate that away and provide that public benefit. And so again, I find this a frustrating hole that's been created by taking municipalities out of this area. We were doing a lot of good things, and when the province comes in and overrules municipalities, unfortunately, sometimes it's a lot of the really good things that we've been able to negotiate in the community that get lost in the process. So while I am somewhat under duress supporting this motion, because it would actually be against provincial law for us to not pass this, I did want to point out the holes that it creates and the challenges it creates for our community, and I hope the provincial government will step up and help resolve those issues. The next speaker I have is Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of clarification questions that maybe people listening or the public might want to know. This falls under Bill 47, so this is required to be passed by June 30th?
That's correct. However, the province had erred in identifying this to local governments in their policy documents until relatively recently, like within the last few weeks. And so as soon as we received that notification from the province, this item was added to the agenda as soon as possible. So it might be that final reading occurs after the due date, but we don't anticipate the province would take action as we're moving forward, subject to council approval tonight.
Thank you. My other question is, there's only 2 TOA areas that have been announced by the province in the District of North Vancouver. And I'm wondering, does the defining of TOA areas, is that the province jurisdiction or the municipalities?
It is entirely within the provincial jurisdiction to define the areas, and then they've required local governments who have transit-oriented areas in their community to define them by designation bylaw at a minimum, and which is why council's been reviewing a separate designation bylaw. Thank you.
So do you have any, do you have any idea at all, or has there been any conversations about how fast and furious that they might designate other TOAs in the district?
Your Worship, we've heard no commentary from the province about future TOAs. Based on the criteria that they've established, we would anticipate that if there was expansions to transit services that met the thresholds that appear to be in place for the transit-oriented areas, that future areas could be designated through provincial regulation, but that's speculation on my part.
The type of areas that would fall that they would designate refers to the rapid bus routes that we've discussed?
Yes, it refers to major bus stops and bus exchanges or transit exchanges such as the C-Bus and rail and the SkyTrain. So they've identified a host of different areas across the province. Yeah.
So basically decisions have been taken out of our control here as well. So I agree with you, Mayor, that we don't have a choice. We have to pass this. But I'm not happy about this because it really is going to, we have a lot of areas in the district that besides just CAPU or down in Fibs, but we have a lot of areas where the on-street parking and the people trying to transit in and out of areas is very, very difficult. And now we're going to, with the SHMU legislation, we're now also going to not mandate on-site parking, but it'll be on the street. So we're just going to create huge parking problems, traffic problems, and congestion problems. So thank you, Mr. Milburn.
I think the SMU designation only comes in at when you're at the 6-unit level for the parking designation. But thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And apropos the comments that have been made around the table, notwithstanding the fact that I'm the mover of the motion, I certainly agree with the different points that have been made. And let me just state for the record, I would have much preferred the provincial government to pursue a collaborative approach with local government. I'm convinced that decisions with respect to the future of communities are best made at a local level. A top-down dictatorial type of governance doesn't work anywhere, in my view. And the right approach would be a partnership where we participate in the future of our community. And let me say as well that there's from my point of view, a real challenge in the approach taken by the provincial government of mandating density without also mandating infrastructure and potentially exposing us to significant challenges to our way of life. Notwithstanding all of that, my motion is in the spirit of compliance with the provincial legislation, acknowledging that we are a delegated authority of the provincial government. And if they, in a clear bill, a statute of the provincial parliament require us to do something, that is what must be done. So that is why I was prepared to move the motion.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Hanson. I will just add, I picked on electrification and car shares, but there are other things that we negotiated away parking requirements for. And so again, when you give away the density for free, when you give away the parking values, it does make it harder for the municipality to deliver on public benefits. We had one development where we gave a rather sizable reduction in parking requirements in order to get a very advanced support for cyclists. And so they produced a bike repair room and storage lockers up on upper floors. We achieved that through negotiating away parking requirements. Another one that came up that was also negotiated through parking requirements, actually it was an initiative brought forward by the developer, was that new occupants in their rental building were going to get transit passes. And so without us being able to make those kinds of negotiations, because the provincial government has gotten rid of the minimums entirely, it's just going to be harder to deliver those public benefits. But so I hope if anyone has the ear of the provincial government, I don't know that I necessarily do, that they raise those issues of concern, because I think it's important for us to deliver those benefits for our community. I see no further speakers on the matter. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Well, I'd love to test what happens if we don't support this. So there's so many questions. We just had Immigrant Link Center Society say they get more traction with us because people trust us. And but we're a delegated authority. I think we're so much more municipal government than a delegated authority. We've been around for decades. We do exceptional work. We're not perfect, but we do much good work in our communities, and we are the closest level of government to the community. People see us all the time, and they know where to find us. So it's interesting, their comments, that they'd rather come to us than the provincial government on their issue. Mr. Milburn, the commercial and light industrial land that is picked up in the FIBS exchange area, what happens to that land?
Your worship, there is a specific exemption for light industry and agriculture where residential uses are secondary or ancillary to the principal use, but that only mentions industrial and agricultural land. So if it is a property that currently permits a residential use, but it's a commercially zoned property, then the transit-oriented area designation will have applied.
So the commercial land west of Mountain Highway between Maine and Bond, or Maine and Rupert?
Your worship, to Councillor Murray, all of the land specifically shown on the designation map in the transit-oriented area bylaw that council approved earlier tonight. Those are the properties where transit-oriented areas apply. And there's different areas. The two areas depends on density and height. And so they're specified in that bylaw.
So the community should be very concerned about the fact that loss of jobs, loss of commercial property, loss of ability to create the jobs that we need is under threat. The increase of land assessments is what got us into this problem in the first place. We are actually in a net loss of light industrial commercial properties in the district of North Vancouver, partly because we have an addition to reserve property, 40 acres off the Dollarton, that is being considered by the federal government. This is not going to make things better. This is going to make things worse. In the second area that was unilaterally decided by the provincial government that Cap University as a bus exchange, half of that land is on an escarpment, on a floodplain with no an ability to access transit immediately outside its doors. Most of it is on a vertical hill, and the embankment of that area has slid 3 times in the last 20 years. So, there's a minor concern there. So I take issue with the provincial government drawing circles around areas, part of which is a river on both examples. There's rivers within the circles that the provincial government has determined what's best for our community. This is not about affordable housing at all. This is just about increase and the idea that building more will somehow lower the prices. That takes decades and massive amounts of density. On the North Shore, I believe that it's a misnomer to suggest that building tens of thousands of units is going to lower, supply and demand is not going to lower the price because of where we are, because of the location of where we are. When you have 3 ski hills in your backyard, when you have rivers every 6 blocks, when you have parks and recreation centers, it's location, location, location. We are geographically situated like Hong Kong. Like, we go and see what the prices are there. It's the same thing. It is not one size fits all. If you apply this in an area, a brownfield in Surrey, it's a different conversation. It's a different conversation on how we build. We deal with floodplains, escarpments, debris flow areas, wildfire risk areas, forest access. So it's, I am going to actually vote against it. I'm not compelled by the threat of the provincial government. Take me away if you want. I'm voting against it. I don't agree with this. I think it's a massive mistake. And I too, Councillor Hanson, agree. It would have been so much better. And we've had previous governments, previous leaders come forward and work with us, try to build relationships, try to talk to us rather than the direction that this current government's gone on. So I'll come back.
I have no other speakers. Councillor Murray, would you like to come back? I will upgrade one of your comments. You said municipalities have been around for decades. We're at 133 years that we've been offering this. There you go. Yeah.
13 decades.
Do you have additional comments, Councillor Murray?
I asked the community and I asked council, I'd call out the provincial government and ask them to come and look at our communities now and see what our streets look like now. Go to Maplewood in the morning on the Dollarton and see what Maplewood looks like. It is filled with cars. And you know, the majority of cars filling Maplewood are commercial trucks. Commercial trucks, businesses that operate in our community that have grown, that are adding more trucks to their businesses. They are parked on the road. Big haulers, gravel companies, Tupper, Headwater, Edgewater, those companies are going to have to go to South Surrey if we don't figure out a place to put them. All of those companies support business in this community. And it's actually how this community was built. It was blue collar. It was built by blue collar workers, mostly industrial, connected to the waterfront. And so parking is such a huge part of the economy in this community in regards to the level of costs that people are buying into these homes. They're buying with the expectation that there's going to be a parking spot. They're running businesses. You don't just park in front of your business, you're parking in a neighborhood. So how does that work? So the commercial businesses west of Maine, if they were able to stay, although under this scenario, I fear for their future, would their patrons be able to park anywhere near these areas? Where are they going to be parking? We're a landlocked community bordered by a mountain and an industrial community. Like, where are we supposed to put the people that are coming in? You know, let's think about what it's like to go to the city of North Vancouver and Lonsdale. Like, it's challenging to park in Lonsdale. It is going to be 10 times worse in our communities. And I really think that municipalities should rise up and petition the provincial government. I think, quite frankly, we should vote this down and challenge them and see what happens, because they have not done their homework in regards to how our community is going to be impacted by this. And I take exception to that after the decades of work we've put into these town and village center plans.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Murray. I see no further speakers on the matter, so I'm prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with Councillors Forbes and Murray opposed. Lock them up. All right, the next item up for discussion is item 8.5, 2024 to 2028 financial plan amendment. Mr. Daniluk has about 5 minutes to introduce the item.
Thank you, Your Worship. This amendment brings the financial plan up to date for changes we've experienced so far this year, including construction cost increases, reallocations between funds, the timing of some projects, and recognition of external funding. It's a relatively minor amendment, but it's good practice to keep the financial plan current through amendments each spring and fall. The changes to the financial plan are highlighted in the report, and of course, further changes will be expected for the fall amendment, and we'll be providing an update on that before the summer break.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be moving the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder? Second. Okay, just my comments on the matter. We obviously, it is pretty standard practice for us to update this mid-year as we're going through a process because things happen, stuff comes up. I was kind of curious, we had a speaker earlier this evening that asked about the state of the connection at Dollarton. And so some of these descriptions don't quite cover. So we got cycling improvements, sidewalks, Seymour, traffic safety, but not really the full descriptions of what those projects are because they were approved in previous capital plans. But wondering, could you say, would any of those three projects address the connection in that space? Maybe Mr. Cullen can speak to that.
Yeah, so Mayor Little, currently in our 5-year plan, there is no intention for upgrades along this section of Dollarton. We understand from the community that east of the Seymour is a big priority. Our current focus is on the Spirit Trail Eastern Extension, which is likely to be aligned more close to the parkway with further discussion required on the exact alignment. But at this stage, there's no plan in the 5-year plan for those upgrades on Dollarton.
Connection on the north side of the road, I believe, was planned to be delivered under the Innovation District program. So that's still working its way through the federal government. So is that what we're waiting on, is a decision on Innovation District to make the connections there, or is it contemplated in future years anyway, like beyond the 5-year plan?
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor Little. We are still awaiting for the federal government's determination on the ATR. And we also are understanding with the recent development at Lytton and Mount Seymour Parkway, we're looking at opportunities once the alignment for the Spirit Trail has been confirmed, how to make those connections to the parkway as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Murray.
Well, I think we've given some direction in regards to the Spirit Trail to use more of the existing trail network than was originally determined. So there must be some cost savings in there. There is space on the lower side of Dollarton Highway between Ellis and the western side of Park Street Marsh or Maplewood Conservation Reserve. There is boulevard. There's some boulevard. There is a depressed trail that runs at the end of the housing down there that we could improve. We certainly made some simple improvements on Riverside between Mount Seymour Parkway and Dollarton that have been used very widely. It's recently been repaved. So it's those little, those little improvements with existing infrastructure. There's also on the low side a barricaded area on the upper side of Dollarton where Tupper Trucking is. It's not appropriate to put it there because of the use of and the truck turns in there. But I don't see why we couldn't just do a little improvement to connect with that open area off Dollarton by the Maplewood Conservation Area and connect in with the bike path at the business park.
Mr. Cohen, additional comments on the matter?
Yeah, so through the mayor, we do plan to come back to council in the coming months to talk about the overall active transportation plan. As council's aware, we do need to look at our official community plan and the updates for that over the next 18 months. Land use and transportation is going to be a natural discussion. So we do plan to come back to council, and if our priorities or the list of projects need to be modified, we're happy to have that discussion with council at that time.
Thank you very much.
Where are the sidewalks in Seymour?
How do you mean?
Well, item 10, it says sidewalks in Seymour. I agree. There's not a lot of detail to the information here. And I think this is part of the challenge that council's having with some of the information that's coming forward. We just don't have, so I understand it's being deferred. There's one, there was one about Deep Cove as well, I think. But where were those sidewalks in Seymour?
Mr. Cohen?
I'll just get some additional detail on the fly here as it relates to those specific sidewalks, but the information I do have at hand here is that we are deferring that work to tie better with development.
But so you don't know where the sidewalks are? Like there's a sidewalk all the way down the parkway on both sides.
I'm just receiving that information for now, and I'll be able to provide that update shortly.
I don't think it's specific to the parkway though, is it? But might be Riverside.
Deep Cove, okay, so item 14. So that's Deep Cove. Or is there work being done on Deep Cove Road? Timer. Sorry. You don't know how like important those 4 minutes are. I try to get a lot in on those 4 minutes. We gotta watch that timer.
Mr. Cohen.
On to both questions here, the one that I couldn't answer just previously. So we often develop our sidewalk program considering neighborhoods as a whole. So the Seymour line item was just in relation to a neighborhood intention for coming into looking at and identifying sidewalk improvements. So that is kind of why we can have more specificity in terms of the exact sidewalks. As it relates to the Deep Cove question, there was a longer term vision for a complete street along Deep Cove Road, but we also know that we are also undertaking planning work for the Spirit Trail. And so we thought that deferring that work as it relates to further investments on sidewalks through Deep Cove should be put on pause while we continue to work through our work on the Spirit Trail.
What's a complete street?
Yeah, so through the mayor, a complete street is looking at all different modes and creating separated spaces for them. Cyclists, pedestrians, vehicles. It's something that is seen as being best standard for multiple road users and having separated spaces for them.
On Deep Cove Road?
That was the intention as part of the transportation plan, yes.
Okay, so I'm getting heart palpitations now because I need to understand what all of these plans are. We need to have a discussion about the transportation plan because I just feel like there's different priorities that staff have, that the community may have, that council may have. And
Hold on. Sorry, Counselor.
so I just think that we need to have a discussion so we're clear about this. I've never heard of a complete street. I don't know how that could be accommodated on Deep Cove Road. You know, again, there's a parking issue on Deep Cove Road. Some of those houses don't even have driveways. They were cottages that were built. So I have these significant concerns about this work being planned and funded and us not understanding or the community not understanding until things start happening. And we're having multiple examples of that, and it's causing some anxiety and some concern. So when are we going to be having a discussion about all of these policies that we have that staff is really clear on, but council may not be clear on, or at least I might not be clear on?
Mr. Cohen.
Through the mayor, I think the key message for me to share in terms of why we've identified that particular project to move forward is that staff believe that that no longer aligned with council's priorities. And so that's why we identified that project to be pushed aside for the time being while we still investigate and conduct our work on the Spirit Trail.
Okay, but I just want to be at the table when we determine that it's not staff's or not council's priority, not just staff assuming what's our priority and what's not. So I think we do need to have an updated discussion about these projects. And I understood through Mr. Joyce that that was something that was going to happen sooner than later. And I'm not sure if that's still on the radar.
Yeah, I suggest if the projects aren't imminent, there's plenty of time for council to go in and meet with staff and get additional information as well.
I'm just concerned about the other projects that are not being deferred. And I think we need to be clear about all of them.
Thank you. Councilors Ma and Forbes. Councilor Ma, your comments?
Thank you. When I look at this, and I know that, adjustments are quite normal during the year, but, no one likes increased costs, especially in our current financial environment. we need to really watch our budgets. Having said that, when I go through the list, some of these amendments are justified. The key ones to me are, the fire truck replacement upgrade, that's about safety, traffic safety. That's a priority that we stated on this council. You look at, addressing hazard trees. I've talked to some of the staff, and this is a big issue, and this is a result of some of the climate change. So we really need to look at this. And once again, related to that is the protective services for fire, wildfire response. So those are stuff that we need to protect our community. I do have a question about the Delbrook Lands Park. It talks about need for sidewalks and tennis court resurfacing, about 650,000. Is this upgrade connected to the plan coming forward from the North Van Rec and Culture Commission? Are these together, or is this something that is being done as a one-off and outside of the plan? So that's one question that I have. And I granted that we haven't seen the plan yet, but I'm hoping someone's talking to the commission to say, is this consistent with what they're planning?
So through the mayor, the new Delbrook Park is imminently planning to go into construction, and this is based on years of engagement with the community. Our parks team works very closely with North Van Rec to understanding what the users are looking for in terms of that scoping exercise. In terms of your queries in relation to the sidewalks and the resurfacing, what we've done is to undertake the project in a holistic approach, so the new amenities with the parks, but also incorporating asset renewal as well. And so those two components are just asset renewal pieces as part of the overall program.
That's a lot for asset renewal. That's my comments for now. I might have some more, but that's for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors Forbes and back. Councillor Forbes, your comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I know amendments at this time, we do them in the spring, we do them in the fall. So it's normal to be seeing an amendment come forward here. And in general, I'm in favor, but there are a couple of things that I would like to just mention or point out. I had a bunch of questions in the transportation section as well, that same as Councillor Murray. And so I really would like to see a staff and council discussion so that we make sure we're all on the same page and we have the same priorities. Because a lot of my questions were involved with the transportation. But another one of my questions was, with forest resiliency has been moved from capital to operating, and that sort of makes sense to me. But if it's moved to operating, that means we have to fund it differently. Is that not correct, Mr. Daniluk?
Through your worship to Councillor Forbes, no. When you're looking at ongoing operation and maintenance related to natural assets like that, we can use that same funding. So rather than contribute to reserves and draw for them for capital investments, we can just reduce those contributions and reallocate that ongoing funding for the necessary work, in this case for forest resiliency.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. The other thing is the channel upgrade, which I guess is back to engineering. It's almost, the amendment is almost the same amount. It's 3/4 of the original amount. The original bylaw is being added on there. Is that due to climate change?
Through the mayor, that is in relation to both adopting our standards for climate change as well as renewing an existing asset. The reason why you see the increase in those costs, one component of that we understand is because of increased escalation costs over the last couple of years, but also we received a low number of bids as it related to that particular tender as well.
I noted that down in the notes that it was the low number of bids, which goes along with businesses don't want to do business on the North Shore. So that's just something that we just gets highlighted over and over to us. The gravel fields that are being converted to ATF, are we talking, where are you talking about this additional, we need an extra 70 now? Which fields are we talking about? Number 7, convert gravel fields to ATF.
So through the mayor, that's looking at a couple of options, whether it's Kilmer, Delbrook, or I forget the third location, but it's in relation to the 3 gravel field conversions that we've been discussing and choosing 2 of those for us to progress forward with the conversion. That's the same part of the discussion we had as part of last fall's budget deliberations. And staff are just working through the technical work to identify exactly which 2 locations are relating to those gravel field conversions.
And will staff be bringing that back?
We'll be bringing an update back to council.
Thank you. One other odd question, it does fit under the transportation, is the cycling eastbound on Marine Drive that we're doing the District of West Vancouver's portion, and then they're going to reimburse us. Is that correct? How did that come about?
Through the mayor, that is correct. So we need to have one delivery municipality, and we've identified ourselves as leading this particular project.
Okay.
And so what you see in the budget is just to reflect the full project costs, but obviously we'll be recovering funding from West Vancouver.
Okay, thank you. I also noticed the expense on the Delbrook side. Again, the contribution to reserves, a net reduction of 1.7 million to reserves reflects reallocation draws and returns within and between the funds. Does it not also, would it be fair to say it also may reflect our ability of how much we can contribute to our reserves going forward?
Mr. Danlick?
Through your worship, Councillor Forbes, in this case, many of the adjustments are one-time in nature, so not necessarily, but there is likely some ongoing reduction as well.
I just want us to be really aware when we get, minimal bids, higher costs, and maybe not being able to contribute to reserves the way we did in past years. I just want to be really clear about how the kind of impact that might have on us going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillors Ma and Pope. Councillor Ma, your comments.
This is a follow-up question. I was going to ask about the reserves as well as Councillor Forbes. The contribution to reserve, it seems to be under the section of operating expenditures. So is this a reserve for operating or capital, or can you just clarify that? And a second question, what are our reserves at? So when there's a reduction of 1.7, what percentage of that is of the total reserves right now, please?
Mr. Danlick?
Through your worship, Councillor Ma, the contributions to reserves, it would be a combination of both operating and capital. I don't know the exact amount. In the financial plan bylaw, you can see, let me just get there. Obviously, it's primarily capital, but there should also be ongoing contributions to operating. In this case, they've been reduced, and the majority of the reduction is to the capital.
You speak up nice and loud for the recording.
No, apologies. And I'm sorry, can you repeat the second question?
There's a reduction of 1.7. I just wanted to understand what percentage that is of our total reserve.
The total contributions, revised contributions are in the range of 73 million, so relatively minor portion.
Thank you. Councillor Pope, your comments?
Thank you very much. My first question is, what exactly has been deferred? Because it's not clear to me in the report.
Mr. Danlick or Mr. Cohen?
Through your worship, Councillor Pope, there's timing in both directions. So there's deferrals and sidewalks in Seymour, deferred out to years 2026 and 2027. And then there's also under item 14, the road upgrades in Deep Cove are deferred outside of the 5-year plan. And Mr. Cohen explained earlier why that was. There's also projects advanced, which are, and Mr. Cohen mentioned this as well, with projects brought forward to be completed along with the Delbrook Lands Park to complete the renewal work at the same time and not to disrupt the community more than once and to optimize the work.
It would be nice, easier for me to understand if that was laid out really super clearly, or there was a line for it or a separation for it that said these items have been deferred from this date to this date. So has anything in transportation been deferred?
Yeah, so through the mayor, in looking at the 5-year plan, so more longer term out from the current day, as I mentioned before, some of those upgrades in Deep Cove, we've put them on pause, and we're happy to have a conversation with council in the coming short term on that aspect. The other piece as well is the sidewalk upgrades in the Seymour neighborhood, which we discussed before. They're the two main components that we've identified.
So just to confirm again, nothing in transportation or active transportation?
So those are both in transportation.
Those are both in
So
transportation.
looking on page 55.
Yes, that's correct.
So if you look down the column that says amendment, you'll see that there's net $2,000 transferred in transportation, that being a combination of a $2,500 move, or $2.5 million move forward and a $500,000 move back, netting out at $2 million advanced.
Okay. I also was wondering about, and I'm looking more at the package documentation. So on page 64, for example, the Hansworth ATF. And we've had questions from the community about this. Sorry, yeah, it's the bottom of page 64 under sports fields. And I'm just wondering, is there, this community fought very hard to get this Hansworth ATF. And now for some reason, there's people out there thinking that it's been deferred, or it's not going to happen, or it's not in the budget. Can you please confirm that it's still there?
Please.
Through your worship, Councillor Pope, yes, that the provision for the Hansworth ATF, which was a playing surface only, is included in the 5-year financial plan bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And into River Park, have there been any changes there?
Through your worship, Councillor Pope, there are no changes to that project within this amendment.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. And page 42, back to the Delbrook, the Delbrook lands. I'm curious about.
Sorry, 42, 62? Which page?
I got page 42 in my notes. Sorry, is it not page 42 where it has the briefing on Delbrook lands? No, I've completely lost my page. 56. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So you're on page 56. 56. Do you mind if I read off yours? Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that. That's weird. So yeah, the additional funding for $430K to deliver the base bid. And I'm just curious about what that entails. I know Councillor Ma had asked previously, and I didn't quite get an answer on that.
Yeah, so through the mayor, what you see in the information before you is informed by responses that we've received from the industry. And so that is to deliver the scope of the park that has been communicated to the community and has been discussed for a number of years.
That's still not very clear to me. I just don't understand why all of a sudden we are facing another 430K just for the lands. And I guess part of that is the 650K for tennis court resurfacing and sidewalks, which I find bizarre, because I know for pickleball courts, if you resurface it, it's going to be 30,000, not 650K. Do you have any information you can provide on that?
So through the mayor, just a point of clarification, just in case, the new Dilbrooks lands is in relation to the new park space, and so it's not necessarily the property itself. It's the full scope
Right.
for the future park, and all the numbers are informed from what the industry has got back to us on. We went out to the contracting community for the scope, as well as what the sidewalk looked like, as well as what resurfacing looked like, and that's the numbers we got back from the industry.
Yeah, I think I would like to see like just something that justifies the 650K for resurfacing. And I'm also wondering if we could, if we're going to resurface tennis courts, if we could include a pickleball court there, because as we've heard, this is what the community wants. And it would be servicing those needs as well.
Mr. Cohen, additional comments?
The only comment I would make is that we're at a point in time where shovels will shortly be going into the ground. And so if there's an interest from council to consider a change in scope, it would need to be fairly soon for us to consider that. It's currently been anticipated to be tennis courts resurfaced. That's the current strategy.
Thank you. Okay.
That's for now. Thank you.
I don't see any other speakers, so would you, well, I heard questions for now, so Councillor Pope, I have no other speakers. Would you like to?
Not at this, no, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Prepared to call a question on the motion. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Okay, the next item I have up is, and the last item of this evening's agenda, because we consented to the last two items earlier in the evening. So this is for bylaws 8650 and 8651, OCP amendment and rezoning for 23 unit stacked townhouse development for 1900 to 1950 Sandown Place. And so just reminders, we're obviously in a changing realm for these kinds of proposals and developments. Because this requires an OCP amendment, that means that we still have a public hearing on the matter, unlike development that complies with the OCP, where we're actually legally not allowed to have a public hearing on the matter. So I just wanted to point that out, that that's illegal. That's why this is the recommendation here. And so I'll look to Yan Zhang for some opening comments from staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is an application to redevelop 3 existing single-family lots into 23 strata townhomes. The site is located in the Lionsgate Village Center, the peripheral housing area. The proposal is similar in scale and nature to the pattern established by surrounding townhouse developments, including Ebb and Flow, the Holland Row, the Belle, and the Mason. The peripheral housing area plan adopted by Council in 2014 envisions redevelopment of this site in townhouse form up to 3 stories in height and a density of 1.2 FSR, which is reflected in this proposal. As mentioned, the proposal is for 23 strata townhouse units. I do want to point out there is a minor typo in the staff report. Page 11, which is, I believe is page 79 of the agenda package, which is, so page 11 of the report, 3rd bullet from the top of the page. It says DCCs on 23 market rental units estimated at X. There's a figure. I just wanted to clarify that this is an error on staff's part. The project is for 23 market strata units.
Strata, not rental.
Ownership units.
Right. Okay.
The district's housing needs report identifies a need for a net new 3,298 ownership units to accommodate the projected growth to 2031. This proposal would contribute to that long-term supply of strata housing needed in the district. The proposed unit mix is 3 one-bedroom units, 15 two-bedroom units, and 5 three-bedroom units. And 3 of that 5 three-bedroom units are proposed to contain a one-bedroom lock-off suite. One level of underground parking is proposed with 36 parking spaces for residents and 6 visitor parking for a total parking ratio of 2 per unit. Off-site improvements are estimated at about 1.7 million and includes new sidewalks, street lighting, raised pedestrian crosswalk, boulevard planting, street paving improvements, utility servicing upgrades, and the undergrounding of the BC hydro wires. The rezoning would also secure a community amenity contribution of 371,000, which council may choose to direct towards affordable housing fund, parks and trail improvements, public art, or other public realm improvements in and around this neighborhood. The project is designed to meet step 4 of BC Energy Step Code with emissions level 3, which provides a high level of building efficiency and reduced carbon in operation. So Mayor and Council, staff have assessed the proposal against Council's adopted policies and bylaws and found the proposal supportable, and it would introduce a needed diversity of missing middle housing in the village peripheral area. The bylaws are recommended to be given first reading tonight and referred to a public hearing so that council would be able to hear directly from the public on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Yan Zhang. I'll be moving the staff recommendation. I've got Councillor Ma hand up first. So Councillor Ma is second on the matter. And just my comment on it, I mean, I think that they've met the requirements we set out for them for this type of project. Obviously, it goes a little bit outside of the OCP requirements for it, but it is in keeping with the general character of the neighborhood around it. And so I think it deserves to be put before the public through a public hearing. And so I'll be supporting issuing first reading and referring the matter to a public hearing. Councillor Ma?
Thank you. As per the district's current strategy, it calls for increased housing stock in our town centers. So this fits that. At the same time, I would have liked to seen some rental units. I do have a concern that these 23 units are all market strata, especially since the original proposal from about 2 years ago called for 24 strata units, of which 2 were market rentals. So my first question is, what happened to the 2 market rentals in the previous proposal? Was that, like, why was it dropped?
Yan Zhang or?
Yep, through your worship, it was decided that lock-off suites would be pursued instead of apportioning a couple, I think it was, as you said, 2 rental units.
Okay, so on that point, the proposal calls for converting 3 single-family lots into 23 townhouses with mixed unit types. So I appreciate that. It does support increased density. My questions in terms of the lock-off units, and I'm not sure if there's another, maybe a minor typo here. On page 72, it talks about 18 two-bedroom units, 3 of which include lock-off suites, and there are 2 three-bedroom units. But then on page 73, under project description, it states 3 of the 3-bedroom units are capable of lock-off suites. I believe the number is 3 bedrooms, or can you just clarify that?
Yeah, through your worship. Through your worship, to clarify, it's 18 when accounting for the locked off units. So the unit mix is 3 one-bedroom units, 15 two-bedroom units, and 5 three-bedroom units. 3 of which have lock-off suites when apportioned to the other it becomes 18 two-bedrooms.
Some additional comments from Mr. Milburn?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment with respect to rental. It's typically only in larger mixed-use projects where you have a portion of rental, and it's because you typically create a airspace parcel to separate out. So you have a separate strata that manages the ownership units, as opposed to the strata units imposing their own bylaws on rental units. So we try to keep those separate. I would note, just a reminder for council, through the provincial requirements, all strata units need to be able to be rented into the open market on a month-to-month basis. That's a requirement, and that essentially what that means is stratas cannot create bylaws to prohibit rental. And we often see in the Metro Vancouver region anywhere from 15 to 25% of these units going into what's called the secondary rental market. So they're offered up for rental. I also note that approximately half of all the units that have been occupied in the Lionsgate neighborhood are rental units. If we looking at all the units that council has approved but are not yet built, as well as those in stream, so currently under application and will be coming forward to council, that ratio remains. We're looking at about 50% of units, new units in this neighborhood being rental units and 50% being strata. So that is actually right in line with the provincial housing targets and the housing needs report objectives that have been set previously for the community. And that means not every project has all rental or all project has, a mixed use. In some cases, we do have some strata projects, and certainly the townhouse product is where it makes most sense to see those kinds of stratification developments occur. Thank you, Worship.
Sorry, Graham, can I just get the numbers again? There's 15 two-bedrooms and 3 of them have lock-off units. So you're calling that 18 units then? Is that correct?
Through Your Worship, to clarify, it's 5 3-bedrooms, which have the capability of a lock-off suite, 15 2-bedroom units, and 3 1-bedroom units.
So just to clarify, so in none of your reporting of total unit counts are you including the potential lock-off suites, is that correct? Potential lock-off suites are over and above the unit count?
I believe through Your Worship, I believe the 18 that's quoted in the report, 18 2-bedroom includes when the lock-off suites are activated.
Itself, it includes the whole unit as one unit, but it's a potential to use as a lock-off. Mr. Milburn.
Sounds got to
If this matter proceeds to public hearing, we'll show a map showing exactly how many rooms, how many beds, and how many lock-offs, both physically and in a list. Thank you.
Okay, just a follow-up on that, and maybe it's just semantics. Capable of. Does that mean they're going to be built, or they're capable of being built? So is there a commitment to have knockoff units, or?
Through Your Worship, maybe I'll take a stab. I think that means that the units are designed to have the 1-bedroom to be used as a separate suite. And then it's up to the owner of that 3-bedroom unit to decide whether they use that as a rental units or not.
No, I get that, but when you say capable of being built as lock-off, they will be built as lock-off. That's what I would rather hear, that they will be built as lock-off.
Yes, affirmative. Thank you. Yeah.
It's whether they're used as lock-offs.
I know, but they will be built,
No, I
not
get
just
your point.
capable
I
of
get your
being
point.
built.
That's fair. Yep.
Okay, this is my comments. I have some concerns about this project, but not enough to refer back to staff. Relative to another 108 project or 108 unit project that came before council recently, and one that I thought was good. This is a relatively small project. It does increase density in the town center. It is keeping with form and character of the Lionsgate Village. I will support this going to public hearing for more input from the community. Thank you.
Councillor Ma. Councillor Hanson, your comments, please.
Yeah, thank you. I will not be supporting this going to first reading, public hearing. I'm going to sit here and continue to speak out for more diverse housing, more affordable housing, and more rental housing. This proposal calls for 23 units of stacked townhouses. a range of 1 to 3 bedrooms, as has been described, with only 3 potential lock-off suites. We can expect units of this type to sell in the range of $1,000 to $1,200 per foot, likely closer to $1,200 per foot, given the location. The reality is that the 2-bedroom units are all going to be over $1 million. What does it take to acquire $1 million property at the moment? You need a savings of $200,000 and you need an income of $200,000. What we're talking about is building another 20 units for people who have incomes of 200,000. It's more of the same. We're building more of the same type of housing for the same type of demographic, when the demographic, which is so desperately in need of housing, people who work in our community, people who work in the jobs that make our community work, working people, working families, they're not given any relief, any help at all by the housing that we're proposing to build with this proposal. On the weekend, I attended Blue Ridge Good Neighbor Day, and I met so many people and spoke, and I met one person in particular, just one story out of so many, lives in a basement suite, pays a significant rent, has a significant income, but not $200,000 per year. I mean, each of us look around this table. Do we earn $200,000 per year? And she looked at me and she said, I mean, the issue for her is that she simply can't stay in this community. She works here. She serves us in so many ways, but she can't stay. If she loses her basement suite, she can't stay. There aren't opportunities that are affordable to her. We hear about this over and over again, and yet what do? We come back and we talk about approving more of the same. I believe that if this council takes a stand, we can get a greater diversity of housing. We can get rental housing. We can get, even in some cases, affordable housing. I believe that if we insist on it, we can get, say, 10 lock-off suites instead of 3. And that's 10 people that may be able to stay in our community, because those may come up for rental. I'll keep saying it. We'll keep doing what we do. I know we're subject to a provincial housing order, but I cannot believe that it was the intention of this government to build more expensive condos for people who earn $200,000 a year and not provide housing for working people and working families. I simply cannot believe that that's the goal of the housing mandates to which we've been subjected. So with those comments, I will not be supporting the proposal.
Thank you very much. Next speaker I have is Councillor Back.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I will be supporting this particular rezoning. I supported the project that came before us in this neighborhood very recently, which was similar type of housing on a different scale, much larger property. But I can appreciate the comments around the table, including the comments of my colleague, Councillor Hansen, and I'll be continue to be extremely supportive of areas where we can generate truly affordable housing. But I think we all have to remember that housing is a continuum, and that on that continuum are all forms of housing. And right now, single family homes continue to be the predominant form of housing in our community and the least affordable. And ground-oriented townhouses do represent a level of affordability for many people in our community, certainly more affordable than a single-family house. There are people who are downsizing from single-family homes. They want to stay in our community, and we don't actually have a lot of new stock of this form of townhouses. And I think for younger families who are earning a very good income, and there certainly are, certainly is that demographic. This does represent a form of housing in one of our town centers that I think will be accessible for some, and I think the lock-offs will certainly help for those few who are fortunate enough to purchase one of those units. I do think the parking is a little bit of an issue. I'll look forward to, should this go to public hearing, kind of hearing what the comments are around that. I think, to have 2 stalls in the town center that's served as well by transit as this neighborhood is excessive in the middle of a climate emergency. But on the whole, I think this project does fit the OCP and the local area plan in terms of the density and the form. And I think those are my only comments at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, I've got Councillors Murray and Pope. Councillor Murray, your comments.
Well, I'm intrigued. I mean, Councillor Hansen has been quite consistent with his voting record on these issues, and I applaud him for that. But I always think we have to go back to where the problem started. And, we have to look at ourselves. We have to look at our official community plan. And we didn't intend for it to turn out this way, but it did. We wanted to give certainty to the development community. We thought we were doing something good by providing density levels within our town centers. We also thought we were doing a good thing by not allowing Stratus to restrict rentals. And all that did was drive the price up. We actually called BC Assessment 3 times before we adopted our OCP and said, if we give certainty with these higher densities, are you going to ramp up the assessments based on future use? And on commercial properties, and they said, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. And then Dykoff on Mountain Highway got assessed at their highest and best use, and they were paying $250,000 a year selling geraniums. So they had to sell their property, a property that they had had in their family for 50 years, and they still operate. We have a temporary lease with them on Dollarton to keep them in the community. So these lots, just out of curiosity, I'm always fascinated by real estate and assessments. They're assessed, the 3 lots that are subject to this development application today are assessed at $7 million collectively for 3 lots. 7 million just to buy the lots. Now, I don't know when these lots were purchased. The current assessments under BC assessment right now is 3 and 2, just over 2 for the other 2 properties. So, and it's the same for properties that we've got in a town center. We've got properties sitting in the town center that are owned by the municipality. I think that should be for affordable housing. I don't think they should be consolidated into developments such as this because they're owned by the municipality, but they're worth a lot of money. And, I brought this up before. So just to purchase the lots is almost impossible. Then you got to build them. And in this climate, it's a math equation. And so really with the price of housing, and you cited it in your comments in regards to, 1,200 square feet, I'd say $2,000. I mean, we've got units up in Edgemonte that were built 10 years ago that were selling for 2,000 square foot. There's the problem. It's free market. It's capitalism. It's what our country runs on. But it is kind of broken when we talk about affordability. Because even 10% and 15% and 20% below market, that's affordable now, but give it 5 years and we'll be right back up to what market is today, given the increase in rental that the provincial government has allowed for landlords to build. I think it's too bad that there wasn't more of a visionary government to say, we should require businesses like rental buildings to be maintained, to be looked after, to not let run into the ground, to protect that housing at all costs. And that hasn't occurred over the years. We've allowed the most affordable level of housing, rental housing that was built in the early 70s and 80s to be torn down. And I think that was the biggest mistake that we made, the provincial government made. And I think it's what's gotten to us this point where the gap between rich and poor exists and is growing.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Pope, your comments.
Thank you very much. I would just like to remind this council that we had an opportunity to create more affordable housing by allowing SMOO, the single-family homeowners, to build fourplexes in the district and align with the provincial legislation, but the majority on this council said no. We have an opportunity to create affordable housing with district lands, very affordable housing. And I was pleased that this council voted to support my motion for transitional housing. We're not going to get affordable housing with this small project. I'm not going to hold it up. I do have some concerns about that have been articulated by others here. I'm, as everyone knows, adamant about building more affordable housing, but I don't see this as being the opportunity to do that effectively. I would like to see the $371,000 in amenity contributions specifically allocated to the Affordable Housing Fund. And that fund, in my opinion, over the last number of years has become kind of a slush fund. And it's very hard to find out exactly where that money has been allocated, although we're repeatedly told on this council that it has been allocated to other projects. I'd like to see that clearly defined, and I've asked Mr. Danelik to provide that at another time. And so if my feeling is if we can direct and specifically ask for these community amenity contributions to be directed to the Affordable Housing Fund and make using district land a priority, then we can actually put a dent in the affordable housing and provide more affordable housing to people who really need it in this community. My one other concern about this project was the parking. I really don't understand why, here it is right on it. It may as well be a transit hub where it's situated. It may as well be called one. And yet there's 2 parking spots for every townhouse. And so I'm disappointed to see that is not reduced. I think that would go a long way towards reducing GHG emissions and reducing the congestion on our streets as well. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Pope, Councillor Forbes, your comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I too am disappointed in this application. The priority action 1 on page 72 of our official community plan review for 2021 to 2030 is to deliver low carbon, compact, diverse housing, supportive public amenities and employment space. This, with allowing 2 parking spaces per unit, is not going to deliver lowering carbon. It's in fact advertising, keep 2 cars. This council always talks about diversification, rental affordability in town centers. This is not affordable. It doesn't cater to diverse incomes. And there's no employment space, which is where we were trying to concentrate in town centers. So I just don't see this priority action number 1. I don't see it being fulfilled at all. Priority action number 5 that's mentioned on page 72 as well says increase housing diversity to support a range of incomes, which I've already mentioned. This caters to the upper middle income. And we've been struggling to find solutions for homeless people. So that range of disparity is huge. And that's one of the reasons why I'm disappointed. This may fit in with the local neighborhood, but it's not what we need. We really need affordable, we really need rental. On page 72 as well, it says the proposal has been reviewed against the district's rental affordable housing strategy and addresses goal 1 to expand the supply and diversify housing by providing ground-orientated multifamily units in townhouse forms. You can take words and you can twist them, and you can take projects and you can make them fit into those words, but that's multifamily. These units are going to be probably mostly over $1 million. When we get to 3 bedrooms, they're probably going to be very small. Even the 2 bedrooms would be small. So it's not terribly family orientated. So those are the reasons that I'm disappointed in it. And the other thing I'm disappointed in is we seem to be going backwards with the tenant relocation assistance. It says here that it doesn't apply to this site because there are 4 units occupied by renters and the threshold is 5 rented units. To me, that's kind of a slap in the face to people that have to go and find another place to live. Just because it's 1 unit short, they're not going to do anything except they do offer the equivalent to current tenants of 1 month of rent. But we're going a bit backwards there because I know when our task force was looking at all this, it depended on the amount of rent that a tenant got, compensation, depended on the time they had been renters there. And there's nothing in this report under the tenant relocation assistance that tells me how long those people have been renters there. I just find that a real slight that they feel that 1 month is going to give them enough time or enough money to be able to relocate in the district of North Van, given the current housing situation. So I'm disappointed in this proposal that came forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pope, is that from earlier? Councillor Hanson, your comments, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd just like to comment on the transportation dynamics of the proposal that we're about to vote on. I think of the woman I met at the Blue Ridge Good Neighbor Day. She is currently living on the North Shore. Her labor market attachment is on the North Shore. Because she won't be able to find another place to live on the North Shore, she'll drive back and forth across the bridge to get to work. But what we're going to do today is we're going to vote approval of 2 parking spaces per home. These people are going to earn $200,000 plus. They're all going to drive. They're going to be working downtown because that's where you earn a living to support these types of incomes. They'll go back and forth. So 3 people going back and forth. It'd be great if we could build more infrastructure, but that would be wonderful. And I'm going to keep advocating for more infrastructure. But another strategy would be realistic land use planning and making sure that we're building the housing that we need for the workers who are in our community and who are soon, one by one, being driven out because of high housing costs. Thank you.
I'll just make a comment about parking. There's no question that people are changing their habits and people are going down to 1 car in a lot of cases, or shared cars, or lots of different alternatives. But I just want to say there's an awful lot of people in our community that use the garages very differently. I hang my camping equipment in my garage. I use it to store, people use it to have a deep freeze, or they use it to work on their bike, or to do all kinds of things. And I think the assumption is that everybody who has a parking stall is going to use it to drive on the bridge every single day. When probably the largest demand for this particular type of property is going to be people downsizing. And downsizing is very hard if you don't have flexible space like a garage. Our garage is full of woodworking equipment and other things. And as my father-in-law's friends have got retired and downsized, they all come to my house on Saturday morning because we still have the garage. And so people use it in a great variety of different ways. I don't think we should be casting negative aspersions on people for using it in their own way, in a way that suits their lifestyle. And plus, it also provides us a lot of flexibility to maintain our own spaces and, paint buckets and other dirty things that we don't necessarily want to have in our living spaces. And so you have some storage. I think people will continue to move off of having, a car per driver or other very high ratios of car usage, particularly when you're in these kinds of neighborhoods. But there's a lot of different ways people use garages, and we just keep saying that it's going to be a commuter all the time, and I don't think that's an accurate representation of what generally happens in the community. Councillor Murray.
I think the thing we have to think about going into the future as well, especially with the previous discussion on the transit-oriented areas, is, and Councillor Hanson talks about infrastructure and how we need more infrastructure. We also need infrastructure that is funded, sustained funding, senior level of government funding. And I think we take it for granted or assume that if people are going to downsize out of their car, there's going to be transit there to pick them up. And transit was funded on the gas tax partially. And the gas tax is disappearing because we've got electric cars and people are riding bikes and people are reducing their amount of cars. And so how do you fill that gap of that loss of funding? And we saw and watched on the news not too long ago, Mayor West, who's the chair of TransLink, and Mayor Little talk about needing more money just to keep the heart beating of the organization. And, an injection of 300 million or 500 million in today's, it means nothing. It's like spent in the minute they get it. And so now we look at increased costs of transportation, increased costs of everything. Mr. Cohen talked tonight and Mr. Daniluk about how everything's going up, the exorbitant costs that we're seeing in our budget. So, the idea that we're going to build all these transit-oriented communities, is there going to be any transit to come and pick people up once they're built? I don't know. I think that's the big question to ask. Where is the money coming from? Metro Vancouver, for our sewage treatment plant for Iona, asked for 10%, $4 billion for Iona. They asked for 10% of the federal budget for infrastructure of that nature. 10%. They had $50–60 billion for the entire country was in the federal budget. And we asked for 10% of it on one project. So I think we have to ask ourselves how we're going to pay for all this. Because that's the big question. I don't think anybody has the answer to it. And I don't know if we are, but we keep moving forward, business as usual, and we don't really know where those dollars are coming for that very important structure.
I see no further speakers on the matter. I'm prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with Councillors Forbes and Hanson opposed. Councillor Muir, I didn't note your vote. Were you in favor? In favor. So with Councillors Forbes and Hanson opposed. And so that's issuing first reading for it. Do we have a date in mind for when that item is going to come back for its public hearing?
Thank you, through your worship. Staff are currently looking to schedule a public hearing in early September, just with the summer break approaching.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, we've completed the business of the evening. We do have an opportunity for reports. Mr. Stewart, do you have any additional reports you'd like to make? I was just going to say that I had the pleasure of attending the American Water Association meetings this last week in Anaheim, and I know there's a lot of focus on people traveling for conferences and tours. At my peril, I'll announce that I did go on a trip this week. It was the first time that I had gone out of town on a trip with Metro Vancouver, and I've been on their committees going back to 2008. I got to tell you, it was a great experience. I got to sit there with staff and ask question after question after question. I got to say, I have a way better understanding of our water system, the connection between the municipality's water system and the regional district's water system, what we face, what Calgary is currently facing with their stuff. I never would have had that understanding of it if I wasn't having the opportunity to sit and talk with our staff and experts about it. And I think it better equips me to make decisions on water matters. I sit on the water committee for Metro Vancouver. I'll do a full report back with Metro Vancouver. They have a process for reporting back after you do attend a conference. But I got to say, the two things that really, really stood out to me on this conference, one was about PFAS. And so this is polyfluoroalkylies. This is chemicals that we started producing back in the 1950s that were very complex, strong bonds. And if you leave them out in the environment, it takes 1,000 years for these things to break down. And we started to realize they have interesting properties for things like nonstick pans and water repellent and all kinds of industrial processes. And we just started producing them in the 1950s en masse. And they've started to realize now that they have a very serious carcinogenic property to it. And so we've already responded locally with bringing in new policies in place for our fire department to make sure that their turnout gear, which has PFAS in it, is properly handled before and after and cleaned properly. But it has a bigger implication for people who are water managers, because lots of places PFAS gets into your water system and then you're directly consuming it. And it's been identified as a carcinogenic chemical. And like I said, it takes 1,000 years for it to break down in the environment. So it's just bioaccumulating. As we're producing more, it's finding its way through our food systems, our water systems, and everything else. So they really did focus on that. And I just, you think about, we live in a rainforest. Half of our stuff has waterproofing on it of some kind. And I think we're going to have to go and do a deep dive in our community and see what maybe the pollutants are coming off of our rain jackets and coming off of our tents and other things that we apply water protection to, because it's looking like it's one of the significant sources of cancers that people will see out there. So I thought that was very interesting. Their climate is very different than ours in terms of litigation. And so they were definitely approaching it from a liability perspective, great fear and concern about being sued over having PFAS in the water system. We have a secured water source with the Seymour Lake and Capilano and Coquitlam as well. So we don't allow boating in it. It's not upstream to another community. It's a very safe and secure space. So I don't think it's going to be a large part of our experience, but we're still going to have to upgrade our facilities over time to make sure that they're taking this out of our process. And then the other one that I thought was absolutely fascinating, which we'll have to apply to the Fraser Valley, is in Southern California, they started to recognize that as you took more and more groundwater was being taken out than was being replaced, but through natural processes. They found that their agricultural belt was no longer able to keep balance with ocean water. And so you started to see more brackish water finding its way into the agricultural areas, which is definitely going to impact what you can grow in those spaces. And so decades ago, they started building these influent wells to sort of create a wall where they would pump water back in, potable water back in, to stop the ocean water from coming into those spaces. And we have something like that happening here south of the Fraser, where they're noticing in Richmond and Delta that the salinity of the groundwater is going up. And so it's something that Metro Vancouver is going to have to address to try and find ways to displace that ocean water by intentionally putting groundwater back in. And we're lucky that we have the Fraser River right there, and we may be able to do it by just bringing some of the Fraser River, rather than having it spoil in the ocean, put it back into the agricultural lands on its way towards the ocean. But it's still something that I think we have to put in part of our long-term plans, or else you're going to see our agricultural lands take a hit in their yield and may actually not be able to produce a wide variety of products. So I did just want to report back on that. I thought it was a fascinating conference, and I still think there's a lot of value in going to conferences from time to time, not every year, not every community, not traveling first class, not staying in fancy hotels. We'll get that on the floor. I really appreciated being able to sit down with staff at the end of the day, and not our staff, Metro Vancouver staff, and have them answer literal hundreds of questions that I had about the matter. So I did appreciate it. One other report I just want to quickly mention was we had Blue Ridge Good Neighbor Day the other day. I know that was attended by a number of members of council. Again, my hat is off to the Community Association for putting on a great event. I was very concerned about the rain early in the morning. At 6 in the morning, we got such a downpour. But as the day went on, it turned into an absolutely spectacular day, and it was great to see the neighborhood come out and support. Any other reports? I've got Councillors Hanson and back. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, just briefly, on the topic of Metro affairs, I attended the Indigenous Relations Committee of Metro on June the 5th. Much was the meeting was in camera, but it was the first and inaugural meeting for participation of Councillor Murray of our council. We now have 2 representatives on that committee from the district. I can say Councillor Murray was extremely well received by the committee. Her words were received with great interest, and I look forward to Councillor Murray continuing to make her valuable contribution to that committee.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I'll just say I'm going to have to go back and watch the tape from this meeting because your conference description got very technical very quickly and I got lost, but it sounded like it was all very interesting. I'm going to just report on the attendance of another conference. Councillor Pope and I were at the annual FCM conference last week in Calgary. As you mentioned, there was a water main break there that, as the mayor of Calgary, Mayor Gondek, said, if you ever want to highlight the importance of municipal infrastructure, that's when you want to have an incident like that to happen, when you've got mayors and councillors and leaders from across the country in your city. But it was a very good conference. I'll just comment on a couple of the tours that I attended. One was of their bus rapid transit, one of their lines there. And as we get ready to welcome BRT to our region, it was enlightening for me to see how it works, how the stations work. And it's done a little bit different there than what we'll see, but certainly seems to be working really well. Also toured the museum, which is currently closed for a massive renovation, but got some ideas there as well to bring to our own museum here in North Vancouver around being able to offer free admission, and that's thanks to some very large donations that they've received. As well, I toured the Central Library there, which if you're ever in Calgary, you need to see the Central Library and just how it is a modern facility and an organization that was really built with the future of libraries in mind, and just how it's being used was quite interesting. One of the sessions I attended was on the use of AI and how certain municipalities are really going deep with AI. And one of the speakers at the session was actually the CAO of the city of Kelowna, and he just talked about the significant reduction in permit times that they've been able to achieve through using AI. And I know that we do use AI to a certain degree at the district, but there's some things there that I want to follow up on that I learned. So it was a great conference, and I as well was at the Blue Ridge Good Neighbor Day, and that was a great event on the weekend, and looking forward to the event season kicking off with Lynn Valley Days this coming Saturday as well. Thank you.
As a musician, I don't know, did you get into Calgary Public Library and see their instrument loaning program?
I heard about that. Yeah, I didn't actually see that. But there's also the National Music Center, which is right next to it. And Councillor Pope and I went through that museum, which is also very, very impressive.
One of the things they pioneered was a musical instrument lending program out of the library. So if you want to see if you're a natural virtuoso on a violin, you can go and find out for free, whatever it's worth. Councillor Hanson. Was that from before? Councillor
Ma. Thank you. Along with my fellow councillors, I was also at the Blue Ridge Good Neighbor Day. Congrats to Eric Anderson and his many volunteers for putting on a phenomenal event. And I found out that there's another owner of a brew pub in the North Shore. He does, some non-alcoholic beer, which was great, and we sampled some. As Councillor Back mentioned, there's a whole bunch of events coming up in different communities, and on Canada Day, July 1st, in Pemberton Heights, we'll be having our little community event there. The parade starts at 10:45 at the former Capilano United Church at 22nd and Phillip Avenue. Activities will be at Southern Park, consist of a barbecue concession, bouncy castle, dunk tanks, and they're looking for volunteers for that. Races and some music. The fire truck from Hall 5, Captain Trevor and his crew should be there. And we also have a confirmed attendance by the JP Fell Pipe Band again. Last year, Councillor Back and Mayor Little attended, and I hope other members of council and the public come out this year. I'll send around something. Okay, thank you.
They did a fantastic job. And you were a cook, I think, at one point in the day, weren't you?
I was working at the concession, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your report. I see no further reports. We've completed the business of the evening. I'll accept adjournment, accepted from Councillor Murray. To all the staff who prepared the reports for our consideration, thank you very much. The members of the public for coming out and participating. Great to have you, and everybody have a fantastic evening. Good night.